a little bit over the years. So today we're going to do the latest version. It has a great walk the dog action, a very violent side to side swing. It's this design really suits sharp, short strips, which I'll give you a little bit of a demo at the end of the video. So this pattern is virtually the same as the conflict shrimp. I'll just give you a quick look at that. It has a couple of little differences, and I may actually tie this fly, but for the most part it is very similar to the crayfish that we're going to start to tie now. So let's take this out of the vise, and for a hook, let's quickly just go over our hooks. Now, the original was tied on a Tiemco 8089, which is a light wire, great for bass. But today we're going to tie it on the Fulling Mill 6040. This is the size 2.0 or 2/0, and it's exactly the same, like identical to a B10. The B10 might be slightly thicker wire, but as far as shape goes, it's absolutely identical. So we're going to put that in the vise with the hook point level with the hook eye. We're going to use the NanoSilk 6/0 or 100 denier. So let's just start our thread on the shank of the hook, and we're going to, with touching turns, we're going to wind it over to the bend until we're about level with the hook point. So for the keel of the fly, we're going to be using large dumbbell eyes. We're going to take our large painted eyes and we're going to place it so it's above the hook point, and we're just with a series of crisscross turns, just making sure that you've got your dumbbell eyes in the middle, because there is a little bit of room on the shank of the dumbbell eyes to sort of get it to one side or the other. So before you get too far in the crisscross turns, just make sure you got it nice and centered, and we're going to try and keep it 90 degrees to the hook shank. And with a series of crisscross turns, if you're using this NanoSilk, you can really pull really hard on it. It's one of the reasons I love this thread. And when you think you've got enough crisscross turns, just do a couple of helicopter turns just to clench those crisscross turns, and all that means is you're going underneath the dumbbell eyes and on top of the hook shank, just to clench all those crisscross turns. And we're going to add some faux bucktail, and in this one we're using brown, and we're going to take probably about 1/8 thickness, which is probably about 60 fibers. Just put that up against the dumbbell eyes so you've got some sort of reference. It's not quite as thick as the diameter of the dumbbell eyes. And we're going to put that up against your hook shank, and we're going to go for hook length and about 1/4 inch. And let's just place that on top, getting a couple of good turns on the faux bucktail. We're just going to wind around the bend. So as we wind around the bend, we change in the angle of this faux bucktail, and that angle really gives you the action of the fly. So the more we go around the bend, the more you increase the angle of the faux bucktail. The more angle we have in the faux bucktail is the more force it's going to put on the back end of the fly as you pull this through. So if you keep on winding down, you'll get a fly that swings to side very violently, and to the point where it'll start to spin. So with the crayfish, you can get away with such a violent action if you want to. Like if you want the fly to swing to side very violently with short strips, you can add a little bit more angle. And you can certainly tie a few flies with more angle, and just so you get the idea of how that impacts the action of the fly. The other thing that will determine the action of the fly is where you place the dumbbell. So as we go through the range of conflict flies that I show you, some flies that we're going to tie, we want the retrieve to be a little quicker, so we don't want our fly to start spinning on us. So we'll change the position of this dumbbell eye, or in some cases it'll be a tungsten cone. It's great to have the concept of what the materials do to the action of the fly. I think that is the key, or maximize the action that you're looking for in a particular fly. So let's just get back to this. So what we're looking for is the tips about level with the hook eye, and for the most part that's what we'll be going with. But just to understand that if you do keep on turning, the fly will react more violently and probably will spin. So to get a more moderate action, we're going to have the tips in line with the hook eye. So once we've achieved that angle that we're looking for, let's flip the thread on the other side of the dumbbells, and we're just going to hold the tips, the butt ends of the faux bucktail. Get a couple of turns on it, and then just grab the faux bucktail and pull up on it as you're pulling down with a thread. And all that will do is it'll put all the faux bucktail on the top of the shank there. Just wind that down a little bit. It's just easier to manage that way. And then we'll just get our scissors and cut a taper on the butt ends, and then wind our thread over the butt ends of the faux bucktail. And if you like, you can do a couple of helicopter turns to clench the faux bucktail nice and tight into that little groove of the dumbbell eyes. At this point we can add a little bit of head cement. Just give it a good soaking. The next step, we're going to add the swimlets, this is the EP tarantula brush 1 inch. We're going to do in a light olive. We just tie that so it's facing forward. I'll give you a little bit of So we've tied that, and we've stopped at the same point we did with the faux bucktail. So the point of this, when we finish doing the body, we're going to pull that over and tie it in, which will give us that beautiful two-tone look, and have all these little nice swimlets with the little rubber legs that are already built into this stainless steel construction. I really think this material is so cool. So anyway, so that's the underbody. We're going to rotate the hook so we have the hook point up. So the next step, we're going to tie in some body hair. This is the golden brown. We're going to take maybe 3/4 of a pencil thickness of body hair, of that much of a clump, maybe a little bit less. Just take your comb and brush the underfur out of the fibres and just pinch any short fibres out. Now I'm not going to put this in a stacker. It's pretty even as it is, but I think that tapered look suits the head of the crayfish a little bit better. Maybe just take a few less fibres. So the length we're looking is from the hook eye to about the hook point. And if we just cross that over to our other hand. Now because we're tying it on the inside of the bend, it's a little awkward to kind of hold it and tie it in at once. So what I like to do is just get a couple of turns, just get a little bit more thread out, a couple of turns around the stack of hair, and as you're pulling down with the bobbin, just kind of lead the deer hair into the underside of the hook there. And when we're happy with that, we can just change our grip and pinch it, and then we can get a couple of tighter turns on that stack while we're pinching it, so it's forcing the deer hair on the inside of the band. We're not letting that roll around at all. Get a couple of good turns. You can even wind through the butt ends there until you get to the other side and just leave your bobbin hang down. Now while we've got it pinched, we're going to cut away the butt ends. So we're protecting those tips. We're just going to cut away the butt ends at a slight angle, and that angle is going to sort of act as a ramp for our eyes. We don't have to get all of them. We can trim the rest in a second. Okay, get a couple more turns on your thread now. You can release the pinch. Okay, now I'm just going to take it out of the vise and align our deer hair so it's in the center of our hook. So I've just equalized that so we got the same on either side. And I'm just going to take my scissors and just clean up that ramp. That's a bit more of a slope there. Okay, just give you a quick look of what we got so far there. Our next step, we're going to do the legs, or the pinches if you like. So I'm using the perfectly barred silly legs in the light olive. Obviously you can change colour to whatever you think. I prefer the lighter colours. I think the darker the colour, the more likely it is to be a hard shell crayfish. I think if you go with the lighter colours, the bass may think it's a soft shell, which probably would be an easier target. So I've got one sheet of the silly legs. What I like to do is divide it by 3, so I get 3 flies out of one sheet, which works out about 7 or 8 strands. So just peel that away. Just place, so we're just going to fold in half our silly legs. So we just pinch them by the tips, so they fold in half over the hook shank there, with the thread on the hook point side of the dumbbells. Just get a couple of loose turns there, and then we can just pull the silly legs forward, and we can just manipulate them so they're coming off at 180 degrees of each other, just coming out of the side like that. When you're happy, just get a few more turns and return your thread to the hook eye side of the dumbbells. Just get a few turns on the silly leg so it tightens it down. And next, I'm going to add some eyes, and I've got some Spirit River large peacock. I'm just going to place them either side of the hook shank there. Just hold them in position. Get just a couple of turns on them, just so you hold them, and then you can manipulate them a little bit. I like them reasonably close together. Just like that. You can, once you tie them in, you can kind of bend them out. I'm happy with where they are at the moment, so I'm just going to pinch the monofilament butt ends nice and close. Just take it out of the vise and just eyeball it to see if that's what I want, and that's pretty close to what I want there. So I'll just place it back in the vise, and I'll trim the butt ends. You can stagger it if you want. It's not super important, but it's not a bad idea just to stagger the tips. And just run your thread over the butt ends of the mono there, and return your thread back to the eye side of the dumbbells, like so. At this point, we'll just add a little bit of head cement on that to make it nice and secure. Next, we're going to put a little bit of EP3D in the sculpin colour. Going to take a pinch of that. I'm going to say that's about a half a pencil, and I've got it one end that's, I'm just going to trim it and then tease it out so it's nice and tapered, like so. And I'm going to place that on top of the hook shank, because this is going to be the top of the head. So we want that going just past the eyes. Just pinch that, get a couple of turns, making sure that we're keeping that on top of the hook shank, like so. And I'll just trim the butt ends off at an angle, like that. And we'll just wind them down. Just making sure we're keeping that on the top of or on the inside bend of the hook shank. We can even, at this point, we can take this out and we can just tease that forward, and you can have a look at it. So see how that's just past the eyes there. Gives it a kind of a cool look. Let's return our hook back to the vise. Now we're going to form a dubbing loop. So we just formed a loop, and we're just going to take the thread over the loop, so it locks it down like so. Get our dubbing spinner and just put that in your loop. Just get my material holder there to stop it from spinning, which is just this. You can put a 1/2 inch now thread just to stop it from coming apart. We can even put that in the material holder too. You can't really see that, but I've just got it suspended. Grab a little bit of wax and put on your loop. I'll just take the camera out a little bit so we can have a look at what we're doing next step. For the rest of the EP fibre, we're going to cut into about inch chunks. You get about four pieces like this, and we'll just slide that in between the loop, starting right at the hook. Placing those chunks next to each other in the dubbing loop. You want to end up with about 4 inches of material. So I've just kind of teased that out so it's even. And I'm thinking that's pretty close. I got one more little piece that I've got left over, so I'm just going to whack it in just so I make sure I've got enough. It can be a shorter piece because as we get towards the eye, it's going to taper a little bit. So then we're going to take our dubbing spinner, as we're pulling back on it, we're going to spin it, making sure we don't suck those legs in. Give it a good spin. Get out of there, you little buggers. Okay. Now, just get your brush and tease that out so our fibres are not tangled and we got a nice thin core. When you're happy with that, I'll just put that in my hackle pliers. So take the loop, the dubbing spinner off, and I've just put some hackle pliers on that. Let that hang down for a second. I am going to just put a fresh layer of head cement on that. If I can unblock the end, just so we get a more durable fly. And just tease the fibres out of the way as we go over the fly. Just get that out of our way for a second. We're just going to tease it as we turn it. We can do a couple close turns, and then we can open the turns up a little bit as we go. Just teasing it. As we turn. taking it right to the end. And just lock that in. Get our brush, or our comb, just comb that out. Let's have a look at it. I think that'll work pretty good. Grab a couple of locking turns on that and trim off your brush. Let's just get a close look now for what we got. I'll get a few more turns on that. So let's turn our fly so the hook is pointing down and the dumbbell eyes are up. We're going to grab our scissors and we're going to trim the underside flat. So we're going to take all that material off the underside. So it's flat, and on the sides of the fly, we'll just tease it forward, tease the hair forward. So we want a fairly robust body, but we're going to take my curved scissors and I'm just going to taper it up, making sure we don't chop the legs off. It's up to you how chunky you make this. Remember that, just poke myself with a hook point. Remember, when it gets wet, it'll probably collapse a little bit. So at this stage, you can make it a little bit chunky. And the top side we can trim when we finish the fly. It's just, if we do the sides now and the bottom, well, obviously we have to do the bottom, but if we do the sides now, we won't cut the brush, those nice little legs that are on the EP brush. Okay, so let's just level the hook up here. Okay. And I might just lower it down a little bit so you can see what's going on a bit better. Now we're going to grab our brush and we're going to bring it forward over the bottom of the fly. To have a look at that. Looks good. What I like to do, we're going to put a little bit of glue. I'm going to use goop, but I'm going to put a dab of goop right in between the dumbbell eyes, and I'm going to put another dab about the middle of the fly. I don't like to put it anywhere near where you're tying it, because when you pinch it down to tie it off, you might sort of push the glue into the fibers and make it kind of make it stiff and unnatural. So we'll keep the glue away from where we're going to pinch it. So I'm just using clear goop, and this will just stop the brush from getting pulled to the side. One dab in there and one dab about the middle, like so. Like I said before, I really love the two-tone look this gives the crayfish. So now we're just going to pull back with nice firm pressure and then pinch it in position and tease the fibers forward and back, so your tying point, you've got as much bare wire as you can. Catch that in with a couple of nice tight turns. Then we can just grab our brush and turn it, breaking off that wire, and then just pull it away. We probably will have a few rogue fibres there like we have now. Just tease those out of the way and get a couple of wraps on top of them, and we're going to finish off with a whip finish. Like I said before with this nano silk, you can do as many turns as you like and it'll still pull through. Like some threads are a little temperamental on that. Oh, got a little bit of blood where I poked myself before with a razor blade and it keeps on bleeding, which is not good. Okay, I just wipe the carnage off my finger and we'll just trim that thread. Add a little bit of head cement there. Which will make that a little darker. You can actually put a little bit of marking pen on there or use an olive thread if you like. I just like the nano silk and I've got it in white, so I don't think that's a huge deal just to have a little bit of a light spot at the end of the tail. Okay, so next we can trim the legs on our fly, or the nippers, or whatever you want to think they are, and we can tease our EP fibers up. I'll just grab my curved scissors and I'm going to form a little bit of a taper there, making sure I don't cut the head. Keeping it a little chunky. So that's the conflict crayfish. I really love tying this fly. It's a crazy fly to fish as well. The action of the fly is very cool. Let's just have a quick look at this guy. I'll take it out and give you a head look. Like crayfish. You can muck around with what colours you think work in your local waters, but this colour was really working well for me this year. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the conflict crayfish. The next fly in the series is going to be the conflict minnow, which is a slimmer profile than the perch. So we'll finish out with a little bit of swimming and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.